Hello, 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 and welcome to day one. Yay, we made it. Day one of your free 7-day training. Just excuse me while I'm getting comfortable. One thing you guys are going to notice about me is I don't have a lot of patience nor time to do a lot of video editing. And I haven't gotten to a place yet where I have a team of people that can help me with those things. So I do it all on my own. And therefore, you get very raw versions of everything. When there's mistakes, we just keep rolling. If I'm adjusting, if my camera falls, you guys will notice that about me, but hopefully the information is still translating just as well. So again, welcome to your first day of training. I am so proud of you. Congratulations. So today we are going to be talking about rewriting your stories. So kind of what the entire training is based on. And we're going to start that process, but we're going to obviously go a lot deeper than just learning how to rewrite our stories. You'll also be have a class on understanding how the brain works. You're going to have a class on how you can create new beliefs. We're going to have a class on affirmations and why people feel they're useless and I don't. And you're going to be exploring the cycles and habits that your unhelpful narrative is fueling. You'll be working on healing your triggers. And I will also be sharing with you a 4-step process to healing those triggers. So you're going to be getting a ton of value in this 7-day free training over the next week. But today, again, specifically, we are talking about rewriting those triggers, which is what all of this are, rewriting the narrative, which is what all this training is based on. So I kind of want to first start by going over the 4 steps for beginning the process. Before we can really rewrite the story, right? We really need to understand what is it we're rewriting, what's not working for us, what narratives are not working for us. So I do usually a mind mapping and shadow work blueprint unit in my intensive shadow work course and membership that my students go through before this process. But obviously, we can't go as deep in the 7-day free training as I do in this paid membership that I offer. But if that's something you want to go deeper with and you want to get, all 8 units of the shadow work course, because this is one of the units in that shadow work course that I'm giving to you guys because I feel like it's a really helpful one, but you're going to want to jump into that container. And if you want more information, I will be providing that to you as well as we go. But without having that shadow work blueprint, how you're going to really navigate this, and it's going to require a lot of patience and observation on your part. Okay. So you've really got to get real with yourself and honest with yourself about what your triggers are, what your most unhelpful narratives are, and you're going to want to bring awareness to those things and make some notes. Okay. Like what things are triggering you most often are you noticing? What unhelpful patterns and behaviors are you participating in that you want to see shift around? And those types of things, you're going to want to make notes of all of that stuff that you'll be working with as you begin some of these processes I'm going to share with you. So the first step, before we even get to the 4 steps that I'm going to share, but before any of that, we need the awareness. So if you're watching this now, what I encourage you to do before moving forward is pause this training, grab your journal that hopefully you have. I forgot to mention that in the welcome video, but I did mention it in the email. You will want to have a journal or notebook or something you can work with over the next 7 days because you will be doing a lot of note taking and journaling and all that stuff. And it's a really great place to keep all of that information in one place. So pause your video real quick and just spend some time contemplating what some of your most common triggers are, what some of your most unloving narratives towards self are. So what kind of ugly things are you saying about yourself in your head? You might look at other unhelpful narratives. Maybe you find that you are kind of pessimistic, that you complain a lot, that you're kind of a half cup empty type of person. Whatever that is, I'm giving you guys examples. But it's going to be unique to each of you. So you want to take that contemplation time. And the one advice I have for you right now before you begin that contemplation is to say the ego is going to rear its head. There's no two ways about that. The ego is going to do that, because the ego is going to see this as dangerous work. Looking at these parts of yourself as dangerous. It's up to you to really stop identifying with that voice of ego and accept that you're an imperfect human being and let that be okay, and love yourself through that. Love yourself unconditionally. And again, in my more intensive course where you're getting all 8 units instead of just this one, we go into a lot of self-love. There's a whole unit based on that. So if that's something you need to work on, you might want to explore going deeper with this work as well. But for now, we're going to just focus on that. So pause, come back when you're ready. So now that you've taken the time to hopefully pause this video and have some notes in front of you, you can begin working. And you want to let these notes be kind of like a fluid process. So you might continue making notes throughout the week, throughout the next few weeks, throughout your lifetime, if you're really doing this right. Keeping notes of these things will help you bring even more awareness to them, okay? So you want to continue with this note-taking process as things show up for you in everyday life, okay? Like you might just be driving in your car one day and you're in contemplation or you're thinking and you notice, that's an interesting thought I just had. Jot it down, okay? Jot that down. And you can continue this way. So once you have the awareness and you have some notes, you're going to begin working through a 4-step process that ends with actually rewriting your story. So the first step in this process is to identify the emotion that's associated with the theme you're working on. So let's talk about the themes for a minute, okay? The themes are created and identified by looking at your most common narratives. So the ones that you find yourself repeating the most often. For example, if you witness narratives that are not loving towards yourself in some way, your theme would be self-love and acceptance, as I kind of talked about. Another example might be that you have observed yourself being really judgmental of others, which would still be a theme of self-love, but would also be a theme of projection or judgment of others. And why would that be a self-love theme? Oh, because when we're judging others, we're really suppressing some judgment we're making about ourselves and projecting that onto someone else. So you kind of still have that theme of self-love, but in addition to that, in that example, we have projection and looking at that judgment of others. So the first step is you're going to kind of look at the notes you've created and you're going to create a common theme, a common thread, and name that theme, whatever that is for you. And once you do have the name of that theme, you're going to then identify the emotions that you have around it. So let's go back to that example I used. If the theme is self-love and acceptance, so you have your theme figured out based on the notes you've taken, based on the observations you've been making about self. So you have the theme, and now you're going to say, what emotions do I associate with this theme? Is it sadness, shame, depression, anxiety? Whatever that is around that theme, you're going to jot down in your notebook what those emotions are, okay? And then once you have that clarity, we're going to go even deeper. So you'll notice each step pulls back another layer of observation and awareness for you. It takes you a little bit deeper, okay? So you're going to ask yourself, when did I first start having this narrative and feeling this way? So we're using both our physical memory and our emotional memory to really ask ourselves, when did we start first feeling and thinking this way? Now, if you're having a hard time with this, I have provided some information for you on automatic writing, and I'm going to make a quick note to make sure I get that in. Sorry to pause, but as I said, we don't really do um, editing here, so you're going to bear with me while I make a note. Include automatic writing. So I'm not going to get into how to do the stream of consciousness writing or automatic writing in this class, but I have a PDF for you that will help walk you through those steps. but that is a really great tool to add to your toolbox anytime you're struggling with awareness or you're struggling even with memory. So if at step 2, you're having a hard time really identifying when did I first start feeling this way, you're going to use that automatic writing tool and see if that helps to pull out any information. And again, you're going to find that on the same page you logged in to watch this video under the files section for you, okay? And you can download it from there. So step 3, with this information that you discover. So far, let's talk about what we've discovered to keep this really nice and clear. So far you've observed some of your most common narratives, unhelpful behaviors, and triggers. All right. And with that information, you've started to get curious and assign each of those things a theme and assign the emotions associated with each. And then we get curious and we start asking questions. When did I start thinking this way? When did I remember that I started feeling these emotions? And that's why we're using both types of memory here, is because you may remember the emotions more than you remember, when I was 8 years old, I started saying X, Y, and Z. But you may actually remember, I remember I began feeling this way about myself or my situation or whatever around this time, and that's going to help bring it out as well. So we've done that. So that is a recap. So now with all of this information that you've gathered, you are going to start getting even more curious and asking, why did I create this narrative? What was going on? So you've identified what was going on in your life, and now you're going to say, why did what was going on in my life at that time cause me to create this specific narrative? Okay. You're also going to ask yourself, how did it soothe, support, serve me, or make the most sense to me at the time? Now, don't panic if you're listening to this and be frantically jotting down. I am going to have a guide sheet for you to work you through these 4 steps in your file section here. So yes, take notes, of course, but just know that you also have these resources and a worksheet or workbook that's going to be included with your training this week. So don't feel stressed or overwhelmed if you feel like you're not getting it all on these steps, because as I said, you have a guide to help work you through it. So you'll want to go look for that guide once you finish this class and start working with it that way. And the final and fourth step, which is what this whole training is based on, is you're going to heal this, whether it's a trigger, a narrative, or whatever that is, through creating a new story. And we do that by rewriting the stories, okay? Rewriting old stories. So our beliefs that we've created, these are stories. You hear me talk a lot about like rewriting stories, creating new narratives, old narratives, blah, blah, blah. This is because our beliefs are nothing more than stories we've told over and over and over, and we've come to actually believe them as truth. That's why so much of shadow work is based on confronting our current belief system. Because if all of our beliefs were working for us, life wouldn't be chaotic. Life would be ticking along smoothly. Everything would be falling into place for us. So we know when things are not falling into place for us. We know when we're experiencing heavy emotions like anxiety, stress, depression, anger, rage. There's nothing wrong with these emotions. And again, we go really deep into emotion in the intensive shadow work course and membership group that I facilitate. We have a whole section unit that's based on these things, but I'm just going to touch on it a little bit here. But there's nothing wrong with those emotions, but they are signaling us always to work that needs to be done, to something that needs to be healed, to imbalance that we're experiencing within our bodies as a whole, physical, mental, emotional, and energetic. Okay. So we're working with those heavy emotions, we're learning that heavy emotions signal a need for shadow work. It's as simple as that. Heavy emotions signal a need for deeper exploration. So this is why I talk about stories. And again, if our stories were serving us, we wouldn't be experiencing these things. So those are good indications that, okay, I'm telling some unhelpful stories. There's a lot happening in the subconscious mind right now that I'm not aware of that's fueling these heavy emotions. Let me get to the bottom of it. And once we do that using those 4 steps, 5 steps really that I gave to you, then you can start rewriting stories and telling new stories that are going to feel so much better in the body, okay? And in the mind and the soul, everywhere in the energetic body. So, as I said, the final step of this process is to heal the originating wound by creating that new story. This is one area of shadow work where you are called to challenge your long held beliefs, which I already really talked about. So, at this stage, you've observed your narrative, you've gotten to the root cause using the three previous steps. And with this information, you can clearly see exactly how this story has kept you small, hindered your growth, or created a lot of chaos in your life, even. And that happens, as I said, because you've told this story for so long and it's been biologically carved into your brain through neural pathways. So when we tell the same story over and over, these two neurons that are from here to here that connect that story, you've literally created a indention in the biological brain. And here's something interesting about the brain. It like an efficient computer, okay? It's always going to take the fastest route, the route of least resistance. So if you've been thinking a certain way for most of your life, that is the way the brain is automatically going to gear and stream your thoughts. So when we rewrite a new story, we are essentially creating new neural pathways. That's why consistency with our new stories is so important. It's not enough just to sit down in your journal today and rewrite the ideal story. That's step one. But you've actually have to read this story and become an embodiment of that story. And you've got to do it consistently to create those new neural pathways. The really great news is we can create new pathways in about 21 days that are pretty well engraved in the brain. So it doesn't even take a full month before we can begin to actually believe our new stories. And once we believe them, that's when we really begin to embody them. Okay. So it's really important that you are consistent in your work through the lessons you're going to learn, basically, even after the 7-day training is over, because that is how you're going to get the most potency out of what you're learning here. That's how you're actually going to see the transformation. I can give you all the information in the world, right? The brain is a great store of information and data. But if you aren't applying any of this to your life, it's useless information. So that's how we really integrate and embody. You have to take what you're learning in your training this week and you have to go apply it to your life in everyday scenarios. Having awareness is the first step, but it's not enough to actually change your thinking. As I talked about, you must consistently tell that new story. This process can take it can take as little as 3 weeks, but it might take even longer if you've been telling this story for a while. You might even find, because these things are not linear, and this happens to me all the time, and I've been doing this work for a really long time on myself, but something will happen in life that maybe throws me off. The universe, throws me a curveball and I didn't see something coming. It knocks me off kilter like life tends to do, right? And I'll observe myself once again telling a narrative that I thought I had long healed. So don't be surprised if these things pop up later down the road as well. Just remember healing's not linear. And that's a good time and a good indication for you to come back to your new story and remember and kind of reestablish that in your mind, because we can definitely slip back into old ways of thinking very easily when we are unaligned or something happens that brings kind of stress or chaos to our lives. The great news is that as you master becoming a non-judgmental observer of yourself, you'll recognize that old way of thinking. So the more awareness that you're gaining through these steps, you're going to recognize that narrative really, really quickly, and you'll be able to correct it even faster than ever before. And your old narrative, which was created many years ago, probably and often in childhood, is where we create most of our limiting beliefs. Not all, but many. Since they no longer apply to you as an adult in the life you're currently living, or they are aligned with the future you're wishing to create, but yet that story's still alive and well. So that's why it doesn't serve us any longer. Like that story, like I said, we usually create it in childhood, but whenever you discovered that you've created the unhelpful narrative, you did it for survival in some way. You did it because you believed you needed that to stay safe. and to survive, even if that's not true. Because we have to remember we're working with the ego in all of this, and the ego is all about survival. The ego is all about keeping you safe. And therefore, if the ego is really activated by some situation we have found ourselves in and tells us we're not safe, the stories you're creating subconsciously are being done because you somewhere believe that you are in danger or in threat. Okay. But when we really look at the stories we're telling and we look at when we first created them, it's likely our lives are completely different than they were at the time you created that story. And therefore, it's not even applicable to your current life situation. And yet we find ourselves continuing to tell that story. Because why? Because as I've talked about, it's become a habit. It's as simple as that. It's become a habit of thought. Now, how empowering is it to understand that your most unhelpful narratives aren't based on anything true? They're based on a habit of thought. That sit with that for a minute because that's actually a really powerful understanding to come to. Um, so moving on with my notes here. Sorry, guys. In writing your new story, you're going to want to look at the old narrative that's no longer serving you, and you're going to want to sit down and write a story. And what do I mean when I say write a story? You're going to want to write this in present tense. You're going to want to write what you want to see in your life as if it's already happened. I'm thriving. I'm happy. Things are falling into perfect place for me. I'm confident. I love myself. Whatever your story needs to be, we're writing this in present tense, not I want to be, because that's always going to keep this narrative like at a bay. You want to begin to tell this narrative as your new truth, which is always going to be in present tense. Okay. So it's already happened. It's already happening. We're not looking to the future. We're saying this is already happening. I am confident today. I am in love with myself today. I am equipped at dealing with the challenges I'm facing. I am always supported. Everything I need comes to me in perfect timing. I'm exactly where I want to be. These are just examples I'm throwing out at you guys so that you really understand what I mean when I say rewriting a story, what kind of messages. And these are going to be unique to your situation. But I'm sure in some of those things I just mentioned, some of those are touching a chord with many of you watching this. So again, I mean to sit down and write out a new story, more serving that applies to the current experience you're having and the experience that you wish to have. Okay. For example, if you've been holding on to a limiting belief around money, let's say you discover you have a lot of money stuff. Many of us do, especially in this society and the messages we've been told about money. So let's just use this for an example, though. You have a limiting belief around money, one of which says, let's see. I'm so sorry, guys. So you have a limiting belief around money, of which there are so many. And you may have blocked yourself from receiving abundance. So, like I said, in this society, we tell a lot of negative money stories. Money is the root of all evil. Um, People who have money are bad people. There's all kinds of crap out there about this, as you guys know, but this isn't a money class, so I'm not going to get too much into that. It's not about manifesting money. We're here to heal our heal our lives, okay? But that might be something that needs to be healed. So if you have this story around money, you've likely been blocking yourself from receiving abundance for quite some time, because as long as that's your belief system, or using this as the example, that individual's belief system that has these blocks around money, they're never going to be able to really fully open up to the flow of abundance in their life. So they probably don't feel very abundant at the moment. And if this is you, it's really hard to write in this present tense when in that moment you're sitting here like, actually, no, I can't pay my bills, or I don't have X, Y, and Z. My needs aren't being met. Which can be a little bit challenging when we're trying to write our own story, right? So if you wrote this story about your current circumstances, It would read very similar to the old narrative in this example. So in this case, you want to focus on how you want to feel in the future and then write about it in present tense. Okay. So in this example, you would want to talk about I am abundant and financially free. I pay all of my bills with ease. Money flows to me from all directions. I never worry about money. Money is no concern of me because there's more than enough. These are examples with that example of what a new story may look like. So you really have to sometimes stretch into that future version of yourself and really embody it in the present moment in the writing of your new story. So your new story should feel good and it should reflect your goals and desires, okay? So if it doesn't feel good, it needs more tweaking. It should feel really good. It should feel really juicy. It should feel really exciting, and it needs to reflect your goals and your current desires, okay? So at first, it's going to be difficult to believe your new story. And that really goes back to what I was talking about with the brain, and not establishing yet this new story biologically and physically in the brain. So what you need to do is you need to revisit your new story, revisit every day. And as you're reading over your story that you've created around each of these themes that you're creating as you go along, visualize, read over it, and then spend some time and close your eyes and visualize yourself in that life. See it, feel it. The really amazing thing is when you're daydreaming or you're thinking about any scenario, the brain doesn't know the difference between what's really happening in the physical world and what you're daydreaming about. So when you sit there and visualize this new story, you invoke all of those feelings, the joyfulness, the freedom, the peace, the happiness, all of the things you wish to experience, you get to experience them in that moment that you're visualizing them. And the more that you're experiencing these positive emotions, that are a direct reflection of your positive news story, the more that this begins to click into your actual reality. It is very, very powerful. Okay. So this concludes your first class of day one training. I've thrown a lot at you guys. Make sure you are giving time for all of this stuff to integrate, and I will see you tomorrow for day two.